I'm one of the people who set Photosymbols up 23 years ago, so a long time ago. And most of what I do in Photosymbols, Holly was saying what her and Sarah do, but most of what I do is around working with people directly. So I work with the expert advisors. I run some training, the foundation course that we do. I also am involved with the Newton project, which is one of the things I'm going to talk about today. That's the sort of carrier, if you like, the vehicle that the um, but this all came from really the Easy Read standard. So, like I say, we've got an hour. It's going to be recorded. My colleague Holly's going to show some. There's a form we've used to capture the information in the standard. So my colleague Holly's going to show that, and we're going to sort of go through that. It's in two parts. So the first part is around Easy Read, and I'll sort of talk about it in a bit more detail when we come on to it. The second part is about technology, about what people have in their pockets, what people are using. There's a lot of talk about moving things to smartphones, and it was really, we were aware when we set out to do this work that there wasn't much data there. There wasn't much stuff written down about how many people have phones that can use apps that people want to use, or I'm thinking more about health service apps, that kind of stuff. So it was really it was an opportunity to gather some information about the technology that's in people's pockets. And I'll talk a bit more about that, about Easy Read on paper and Easy Read on different outputs. So the standard is based on a website called easyread.co.uk. So if you haven't visited it yet, that's a good place to go and have a look at it. It's a free site that we put up with some tools on there. So there's an easy writer, which helps people. You can put a document in there, and well, you can put a lump of text in there and it will write it in an easier way, or the AI will write it. The other thing on there is a standard checker. So you can put your work in there, and this is quite popular. You can put anything that you're working on, a piece of Easy Read, into the standard checker, and it will check it against this standard. So this is a sort of key feature of the standard, of it being something that's active, dynamic, that people can use to grade work. They can use it to, if people are asked to quality check work, they've got a list of things they can check it against rather than it being anecdotal. That anecdotal stuff's important, and people's lived experiences and the things that annoy them about Easy Read or not Easy Read is important. But this is the first step, really, a list of sort of do's and don'ts or suggestions that are in the standard. So the standard is really come from the Newton project, and the Newton project wasn't intending to set out a standard. The idea was that I would visit groups around the country and I would ask them questions from this questionnaire. This is what we're going to be having a look at that in a bit more detail later today. And the idea was that we'd feed that information into our EasyMaker product. So we would use it to write the prompts. So if people said they like new words in bold, we would make sure that the prompt in EasyMaker did that. So as we were going around, I think we'd done 20 meetings at that point, probably end of last year, probably December last year, January this year. We were thinking, actually, this is a really good set of information or data that, yes, it will train the brain in EasyMaker to write good prompts, to make good Easy Read, well, what people want. But it's also something that we could share with other people. And that was where the standard came about. We thought, well, what's a way we can share it so that people can actually use it, incorporate it into their work? And a standard just seemed to be the obvious solution. So far, I've visited 24 groups with the questionnaire. I stress to people that it's not an exam. I support people by not asking people to fill them out individually unless they want to. I get a show of hands around the room. Um, I don't think I've ever filled out the whole questionnaire with a group from start to finish. And I say to people, it's okay to just stop on one thing or dig deeper into one thing or not talk about something else. So it's not an exam, it's not a test, it's just a way of capturing things really, a sort of snapshot really of what people think Easy Read is or what they want. So that's the that's a bit about the questionnaire, a bit about the Newton project. I'll talk about that in a minute. Um, I'm going to stop halfway through the questionnaire when we talk about the questionnaire. Talk about give people a chance to ask questions, so that when we get to that point, if you've got a question, I'd hate to get to the end and run out of time. So if we're running short of time, we can skip the technology section. I'm going to do another of these talks in May, I think May the 21st. So if you've got anything that we don't cover today and you want to come back, that would be great. So I'll press on. We've, like I said, we've been to 24 groups so far. So if Holly, if you could put that slide up, and
Yeah.
I can see people from some of those groups here. There's Marsh there and Fliss. So these are the groups. We also talked to individuals as well. Only three in this first one, and they were sort of people that we knew well or people who expressed an opinion. So there was a group before this, Clasp in Wokingham, and they were sort of one of the ideas for the questionnaire. So I did include them, but I didn't put them on this list. So this is the first set. There was a lot of driving. I worked out that it was 5,650 miles and rising so far. So a lot of driving. So we started off with people first groups, really, ones that we'd got a working relationship with, people over the years, sort of 20 years of doing shoots. We've got a network of people that either advise us or are actors or models for us or help out on the training. And some of these groups we've known for a long time, Camden People First, Cornwall, Lewisham Speaking Up, and so on. And some of them were new groups. We go to the next one, Ollie. Um, So there was one there from United Response Scrutiny Group. So this is a thing where we're now talking to groups that might be ambassadors to organisations, sort of Easy Read champions or part of scrutiny groups or advisors. So it's not just the People First movement or sort of 100% pure self-advocacy groups now. There's also a sort of friendship and dating or social club there, Meet and Match in Oswald Thistle. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Um, so one of the groups I'm talking to now is a nightclub as well. So I'm sort of making arrangements to go into other areas, groups that might provide sort of relaxed settings, cinema, nightclubs, friendship groups as well. Um, so if we could have the next one, I think that's all 2025. So this is the second wave. Um, and the most recent one was RCT People First in Ferndale in Wales. So that was 2 days ago. Usually I ask for there to be 6 people in the meeting. So we're trying not to sort of have a great big session where it's hard to hear the individual voices. It's the quieter people don't get a chance to speak. Okay, Holly, if you could take that one down, that'd be great. Thank you. Um, so at the moment, it's 136 people I've spoken to, mostly in groups of 6. Um, each group and each individual is paid for their time, and there's not a voucher in sight. It's all real money, and the sort of rates that you'd pay an expert. It's what I'd pay somebody who was an expert, not in a self-advocacy group. Um, Other things is I've spent a lot of time in travel lodges, so there's a lot of time for just processing information, driving to and from places, letting it settle a bit. So some of the things from that sort of settling process about patterns that emerge or things that people say that make me think, or things that I thought I knew and it's changed. I put into some blogs. So there's a few blogs on our website, and Holly or Sarah will put those up as we go along that sort of outline the journey a bit more about some of those kind of moments driving, thinking, oh yeah, that was a really important point. And I see that as a part of it, really, as a sort of commentary. And this goes back to this idea that the standard is a sort of baseline. We've asked people what they think. They've told us what they thought of that particular time. We're going to come back. We're going to meet with people. We're going to keep coming back. We'll do another 20 groups this year, probably another 20 next year. Keep adding to the standard. Keep adding little nuanced bits of information. Trying to sort of dig down when people say. So one of the things that came up the other day in a group in Brighton was we were talking about information on your phone, and people were saying, I like seeing stuff on my phone. And I was saying, well, is that because when you're on the bus, getting a piece of A4 with lots of symbols on the side is actually quite a stigmatizing thing, or it might make you feel not so good about yourself? Whereas if it's on the phone, you're sort of locked into a thing and nobody can see what you're doing. So there's these little nuanced bits about what's people's preferred kind of information, how do they want to access it? Is it is it always going to be paper? Can we move away from that if people want to? So those are some of those bits that come up, anecdotal bits that will either go into a blog, or I'll think of some way of talking to people and either incorporating it into training. Or one of the things I want to do is pretty soon is to get a newsletter together of all the groups, because this is something that people have. And now we've got more information. I can say, oh, well, that's other groups have said. Lots of other groups have said this, but you're saying that, and what do you think about this? So I can actually sort of compare and contrast to some of the previous answers, and people seem to enjoy that. They seem to say, oh, what did they think about that? What a group in Cornwall might say would be very different from a group in Lewisham. And when we was talking to Cornwall early sort of March last year, AI wasn't as far out of the bag as it is now. So the latest group I went to, everyone's going, oh yeah, I use this all the time. I use Gemini, I use Copilot. A year ago, that wasn't the case. So there is this big difference already that I'm seeing in different groups. Anyway, so that was the Newton project, really. We started it to sort of train the AI prompts, develop the Easy Read standard, identify groups that we could collaborate with. There's other things that we're working on. We're very interested in people's voices, and some of the stuff has been about actual physical voices. Some of the stuff about audio output has been about, well, what should that person sound like? Should that person have um, a received pronunciation accent? Should it be really clear? Would that be taking people out of the mix? People who maybe have a speech impediment or have trouble speaking, should there be a way of hearing from those people as well? So there's lots of sort of questions that we want to ask people about voice. And one of the benefits of the Newton project was this idea of these groups become future collaborators with us, that they guide us and they maybe tell us about things that people want to see. Okay, so yeah, so there was collaboration, networking, blogs, things that reflect our practice that we can sort of learn and develop. We were also really keen to know about outputs, about what are the formats people want. Do they always want symbols? Would an audio version be on its own be just as good? What are people's preferences? How satisfied people are with the different formats? And we felt that we were in a unique position to do this, that there wasn't many people that could drive 5,000 miles. It's like a song, isn't it? 5,000 miles and then go around and spend hours in the travel lodges and all of that sort of stuff. But we'd been doing that for a long time and had these relationships with these groups. So we felt if we didn't do it, who would? There was an idea of like, let's get a snapshot, and we're probably the best people, maybe the only people that could get a nationwide one. Um, and that's been a theme about, well, who will step into the easy read space with the advancement in AI, and things that used to take 4 hours now take 30 seconds. Who are the people that are going to come in and say, yeah, we want to do this, we're going to package this in a certain way? What's their AI going to look like? Is it going to be based on ideas that come from Oswald Thistle? There, I've got it this time, or Wrexham or Norwich, or is it going to come from California? Is it going to come from off the shelf AI that's just come out from some Silicon Valley? Not that I've got anything against that. I'm just saying it's a chance to connect people. So the standard the standard sort of evolved, like I said, from the Newton project, and will keep evolving. And maybe now's a good time to have a look at the forms, Holly, if that's okay.
Yeah. Mm.
No worries. While Holly's setting that up, I would, if I was going to do this form again, I would do it differently. And I'll go through some of the things I've learned about. It's been a big learning curve for us. We're not academics, we're not researchers. We're just people who had a big contact book and an intention to do it. So I would do it in a different way. And as we go through, I'll point out some of those ways. So this is just a sort of welcoming page. I'm just down to about the last five or six copies. So we're going to redesign it. If you go to the next page, then Holly, please. So we start off. The start is quite. I would have a more gradual start if I was going to do it again. I would have something. It's a bit of a kind of uphill sort of jump. So we start with fonts and text. Then we go to bold words. Now, oh, sorry. If we go back to the fonts.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's my fault. I found that handwritten fonts are much more popular than I realised. So I'd been training people, probably 1,500 people, saying, "Oh, handwritten fonts, no, nobody likes them." And yeah, I've been proved wrong consistently going around that. So there's lots of this learning here. So if you go to the next page, then capital letters, normal letters. I'd probably change the wording on that again now. Pictures on the left or right, I would probably put, do you prefer the pictures before the writing or after the writing? So these are all things that we've learnt in the field, and the next version will be amended. This stuff will be taken on board. If you go just down a tad, there you go. One of the things that every group bar one said they liked was a big picture cover on a report. That came out really strongly. And the thing I was getting behind that was, if people could see what it was, they wouldn't waste their time if they didn't think it was important. So they would just not bother to read it if it wasn't about something that interested them. Okay. Page numbers was popular. Again, that was something I was teaching people not to do on my training course. Bullet points popular. Coloured background. And a lot of people hadn't come across this and didn't realise that it made any difference. And we were sort of playing around with different things, and light yellow was very popular. Okay, and the next one. Language and tone. Now, so one of the things working with the different groups was you could see where there was fingerprints, where people had done a lot of work on things like terminology about which words do you prefer. And one of the things that came out, where that came out the most, was in this question, that there was almost a sort of, I'd ask the question and it was like, learning disability. So you could see that had bedded down, and that was a really important thing. So the next question, are short sentences easier? This was interesting. So I thought, again, everyone would like short sentences. And then I was in Lewisham, and somebody in the group said, when I see things in short sentences, it feels like I'm reading a children's book. The dog is tired. And there was this thing about maybe short sentences can be patronizing. So that hadn't occurred to me. So there's all this learning that could probably go somewhere else other than the standard, about maybe a sheet saying some of the reasoning behind some of these things. The second question there, the bottom question there about acronyms was interesting, about how much should people learn service providers jargon, and it was like, is it worth making the effort? And there seems to be a feeling about, it's not about the name, but it's about what it's about. If it's about the BBC, it's about TV. I've got that. If it's about the NHS, it's about health. So people kind of knew what the activity or the function was, and then the acronym was a sort of label on top of that. The letter stuff didn't score well, so people were saying, no, that's not something I understand, or that's not something I'm aware of at the moment. Okay. uh, these 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 blocks are usually the bits that I miss out, that it's quite difficult, and the next version will have different a different setting here. I'm not sure how to do it yet, but this hasn't worked very well. um, okay, next one. I changed real photos. I think it sort of biases it towards photo symbols. Real photos sound like, it's 100% genuine and authentic. um, Most of the people said they liked photo symbols. I was there paying them and being nice. So yeah, there's a bias built in there already. Um, Widget, I was finding pockets of people using widget, and it depended on people's school experiences, that kind of thing. But it wasn't. It was more than I thought it would be. So this next one, do you like pictures of people with learning disabilities? This was one of those things where somebody had done work with people, or people had a discussion about representation, and that was a sort of resounding yes on that mostly. And the same with different types of people, very popular. That was very popular. There was a thing about body image, and about people didn't seem to like. It seems like I'm beaten up on California all the time, but they didn't like the idea of sort of West Coast models. That they liked people who looked like people they might know or stand next to at the bus stop, and that was quite a strong sort of theme throughout. Okay. Okay, so we're at the technology one now. I wonder if this would be a good place to maybe take a few questions if I've not
Yeah.
covered anything.
We've got a few from the chat. Do you want me to start off with those, or
Yes,
do you want
please.
to open the
Yeah,
floor
yeah. Just
first? Yeah, okay.
should go.
Yeah, so just to kind of group a couple of things together, to start with then, sort of Gary's questions, well, a point really, which I think is
Oh, hi,
really
Gary.
helpful,
Yeah.
is whether the questionnaire was done in different languages, and if English was not the person's first language. So I started off just by saying that at the moment all the conversations that were had in English, but I don't know if there was anything else you wanted to say about that, Pete, before I. And then the
No,
other.
that's something for the next version, I think. An audio output version. But yeah, thank you, Gary.
And Gary, your question about support with technical translation and communication, do you want to, are you all right to ask that one? Sort of, yeah, and then we can
Yeah,
dig into that one.
my question was about um, photo symbols has come a long way from doing all the symbols and everything.
Yeah.
But I thought, is there something we can help people with more profound learning disabilities and people from minority ethnic groups when it comes with technical? Because now we have AI and everything about things that they can actually do now, one language into another language and all
Yeah.
that. That's
These are things on our
something.
wish list, Gary. Yeah. Holly, I know you've got a project on about people who need more support, and about how we sort of reach out to those communities. And we're always looking for actors and models, and that's not going to stop, even with AI getting better and better. That's a very sort of core part of it. I think there's some really exciting stuff going on with translation and voices, and that's something we're looking into as well. It's really like there's so much out there that we could do, and that people just generally, anybody making Easy Read could do. It's like, where do you start? What do you start with first? And I think, yeah, I think there's something to be said about the languages thing. No, it's exciting. What can be done? I don't know if that answers your question, but it is on our list. But the list is like gets longer every team meeting. It's like, oh, and this, and that, and this. So, which is a good problem I have. It's
A
a good
nice
problem, I
problem
guess.
to have.
Yeah, yeah. Very different from the old days.
Yes,
Swindon people
certainly
first
is.
and all that. Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Gary.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Paula's got a question as to whether people would be able to have copies to use with their own tenants and staff.
Yeah, it's not something I've thought about, but I mean, I don't see why not. I'd probably like maybe photo symbols one and make it sort of less about us and more about something that people could use as their own resource for their organization. Yeah, no, I mean that's very doable. If you give me an email, Paula, afterwards, we can have a chat about that. It's pete@photosymbols.com. But yeah, it's this idea about some of these things are just too good to keep. It's if we've done a load of the work, then it would help other people too, I think. So please get in touch. Anything else on the questions at the moment?
There's a couple of questions in there. There's a question in there about the linked standard, which I will answer in text because
Sure.
that'll be easier. And then Amelia has asked whether, alongside using, if you don't mind, Pete, I'll sort of quickly answer this. And then, but alongside using AI images, will you continue to work with people with learning disabilities to take new photos? Yes, we had, I think our most recent shoot was last week or the week before. And it's very much the core of the business really is everything we do involves people with learning disabilities, and definitely our photo shoots definitely still going. We've actually added to the team last year, so we've now got a full-time photographer and full-time designer who are both focused on the photos with real people. So yeah, definitely still a big thing for us.
I'll add a bit to that. It does feel like, so you've got this advance of AI, we've got a full team. Things internally in photo symbols seems like it's coming together, like the ecosystem's kind of working. And the standard's very much part of that. That's something that how we see that sort of out there in the wider community about, well, here's this thing that you can use. You can use it to work on your own Easy Read. You can use it to maybe work with a group that Quality Tech's Easy Read. You can use it in other ways. It's a tool, and it's almost like a touchstone. This is the start, and it's a dynamic thing that will be changing as we meet with more groups. So yeah, it's something that people can come back to and sort of develop from, I think. Okay, does that make any more questions, or should we move on? Okay. Should we go to the technology section, Holly?
Yes. Just get the share up.
Right. So again, I would change this one. It comes across as a bit of a barrage of like, do you like this? And I think I would space this out a little bit more next time. And the next question was again about this work we're doing on the voice, about what do people feel about robotic sounding voices? Because there's some theory that we're more likely to take criticism if it doesn't sound like a human. So if we're taking instructions, computer sounding voices are more effective. And people were sort of joking about that. A lot of people had experience of being in going through to automated calling systems and stuff like that. And we're actually sort of quite laid back about it, that well, there's nothing you can do about this. This is the modern world, that I'm talking to a computer. I know it's a computer. There was more pushback about that in GP surgeries, where there were systems calling people's names, and people were saying that when the computer says it, it doesn't sound like anything like my name, or it felt like that was maybe more of an intimate setting where the voices weren't as welcome, the computer sounding voices weren't as welcome. But again, this is all just anecdotal stuff that I'm picking up from different groups, and it might change. Like I say, what people say in Norwich might not be the same as what people say in York. Okay, so if we move down a bit, a lot of Apple iPhones out there, fewer basic phones than I thought there would be, and this bit needs careful handling as well, because it becomes a sort of bragging, not a bragging thing, but I don't want anybody to feel like, oh, I've only got a basic phone, or I don't want anybody to feel inadequate as I'm going through. And so I have to say to people, well, not everybody uses a phone. I don't have a TV, and sort of say that it's okay not to have this stuff, that it's not a kind of race to acquire as much toys as possible, or as many toys as possible. But iPhones were very popular, and the Android, few basic phones here and there. And the next one, thanks. Computers and laptops. Some groups, group the other day, 5 out of the 6 people had a laptop, and used it by themselves pretty much. So yeah, I'm seeing more of that. Okay, and smart TVs were really popular, and people, from what they were saying, were sort of pretty skilled with them, could work their way through it. And there was a thing about some groups sort of recommend ideas and say, well, could you not make Easy Read on Zoom? And then that would be, I could look at it as a Zoom, and it would be just a rotating thing. It would be rolling around. So I'd join it and then watch it through, watch a document being transmitted as a video over Zoom. So there's people thinking of stuff about how they can see stuff on their screens in their homes with something that they're comfortable with. Voice assistants, very popular. And there was sort of a bit of love towards them as well. People were so, oh yeah, that Alexa, I'm not saying it too loud. That one wakes me up in the morning or gives me recipes and so on. So that was not surprising, but there was a lot of people using those. Screen readers, people knew of people, so there weren't many people in the meeting, and that might be about the format of the meeting, and it might be a bit about self-selecting, but yeah, not coming across that much. People had sort of anecdotes and would say, oh, it's a bit like so and so who has the magnification really big on their pad. And the same with speech tablet. People sort of knew about Stephen Hawking, and it was, it's a bit like that, but that was mostly it. I think that's it on the technology. Oh yeah, this is another of these blanks, and yeah, so that's the end of the questionnaire. The We haven't put the data out, or data. We haven't put the information about the technology stuff out there yet. So I don't know whether people think that'd be useful, that we did something with that and let people know that, or whether it's something that we should just keep to ourselves and just build and build and build more information about it. But the standard came from the first part of that form, and the technology stuff is yet to be sort of used. So that's something. I don't know what your thoughts are really, whether it's useful. I guess it depends on the size of group that you're writing Easy Read for. If it's people that you know, and you know that Susan has a laptop and Stephen prefers it over the phone, then you've got that information already. Okay.
A couple of comments in the chat saying that would be really helpful, that technology angle.
Okay. Yeah, it's probably, if there's a rolling set of meetings, it's probably one of the things that we could do pretty easily. Just keep it up to date. So I've talked a little bit about some of the sort of anecdotal stuff I've come across. So I talked about Comic Sans being popular, handwritten fonts being popular, front covers being really popular, a big bold front cover, coloured backgrounds, a lot of people using audio as well. And again, just to sort of summarize that, you could come across places where people had touched on topics before. Another thing that people said to me, and one of the blogs I think I wrote about this was about, I think it was called An Elephant Playing Twister or something, some such other wonderful title, was this idea about quality checking versus doing easy read from scratch. And there seemed to be, talking to some groups, a thing about, well, actually, as a people first group, if we meet, say, once a fortnight, or the easy read group meets once a fortnight, it's a lot of work to take a document that's given to us, even if we're paid for it, and then to turn that around quickly. And also it might be something around that we have to introduce new topics. So if it's about a difficult subject, say mate crime or hate crime or sexuality, then the group needs to be supported. And for some people, those might be new areas of work. So it felt like it was quite a steep learning curve to get an easy read document out, and people were saying that they sort of preferred, and again, this is like 2 or 3 conversations just after the meeting's finished, about saying actually it's better when we quality check the information. Somebody else does it, they send it to us, we check it, we don't need to do all this kind of like front end work about explaining what everything is. We can just go through it and say we like it or we don't. So that was something that came out really, and that was something that I was surprised about. Okay, any further questions really about those points before we move on?
There were a couple of, just in the chat, sorry to jump in.
Go.
Just a little, a sort of a comment really from Nicola that Nicola's had conflicting feedback about Comic Sans. I know we were sort of surprised, weren't we, with some of the stuff around Comic Sans. And then Kingston University just asking why we went for multiple choice questions rather than open-ended answers to some of those questions.
I think that was I'll answer the last question first. I think that was about getting the data quickly. I mean, the meetings last 2 hours, and that's about the limit that people, myself, can concentrate for. I have come out feeling like, oh, that was a long one. So I think it was about getting as much information as we could, and the open-ended thing. I mean, it sort of brings me on to the next thing really, was that what I found this year is that I need to go back, that one meeting isn't enough. And that when we started doing it, we were talking, EasyMaker wasn't invented, so I couldn't, it was just sort of being finalized, and I didn't have much to show people, but now I have things to show people. And referring back to that thing about when I was in Cornwall in March 2025 and AI wasn't that widely known, and a year later a lot of people are using it, I think it's sort of time to maybe dig a bit deeper really about that, and that's not going to happen in one meeting. I also want to do a bit of what Holly was talking about working alongside people and getting people to try it out, to say, well, how would you tell the AI to represent an image of homelessness, or and sort of play around with some of these stereotypes or sort of common thought processes about what an object should look like, and see how that can be done with AI. You're not going to get that done in 1 2-hour visit. So we've got this idea, and I'm starting to do this with some groups. Dudley Voices for Choice, I think, is the first one. Then My Life, My Choice is to do a second visit, and a lot of the groups we've done, I'll be going back to and saying, okay, this is what you said, this is the standard, how do you see this working? What was the first question, Holly? Sorry, I got
First question was, and I'll kind of link that in with another one. The first question was more of a comment about having had conflicting feedback about some people liking or not liking Comic Sans. And then there were a couple of questions. I don't know if you'd be able to answer these now, Pete, but there's a couple of questions about what the preferred font was, the font size and the font
Right.
type, and whether there was anything about the preference in terms of which was more popular, like paper or phone or computer screen, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I'll go with the Comic Sans thing first. This is this thing about, well, who writes the standard? Is it written by people who are designers, who have an artistic sensibility or who've been trained, and they say, yeah, well, Comic Sans looks like a menu in a sandwich shop, which is one of the rude things I say about it. Or is it people that's got a bit of like font snobbery and they set the standard, or does it come from the group? And it's not sort of that binary. It's like, well, where is that line where you say, yeah, here's artistic expertise or design skills, and here's the people who use Easy Read, here's their preferred formats. And I think it's having an awareness of that continuum about, well, where do you put the standard on that line? And I think it'd be very easy, if we hadn't done this, just to say this is what we think. And like I say, I'm changing my mind and learning things doing this, to say put it right up at the design end and go, well, you must use this font. Optima is fantastic. And I think I was too much that way. And I think it's a continuum. But you need to know what people say to be able to step onto that continuum. Really, you've got to have that awareness. So that was the thing about Comic Sans. What was the second question there? The middle one?
What the preferences were for things like font and
Okay.
for like format, in terms of sort of paper versus phone and that kind of thing.
Yeah. With font, I mean, I've said a bit about Comic Sans and that sort of idea, but there was a thing about size where if people read already, they preferred medium. This is just generally, but they acknowledged. I was in a group in Birkenhead recently, and there were a lot of people in that group who were skilled readers, but there were other people in the group who weren't. And they, for their peers, they were saying, for their friends and other people in the group, they were saying, we prefer it in large print because that's more inclusive. It's an obvious thing to say, but I mean, when you're hearing it and people saying, well, I don't need it in large print, but it's so Stephen, Fred, Sue can understand it, or it helps them. So large print was popular. We did talk about in some groups about how thick do you want documents to be. So if the print gets larger, there's a letter from the GP suddenly start looking like an old-fashioned phone directory, and there's a sort of sweet spot there about how much paper we're using, how thick, and going back to that idea about, I like to look at it on the bus and there's no stigma, everyone's doing it. So carrying around a great big book to go, that you can read from space kind of thing. So again, it's another thing where there's a line, really, a continuum about font size. And there was another one, was there? Question after that one about the font size?
Formats. In terms of
Formats,
sort of formats, how you use it, yeah.
Mostly paper, that people are saying, because I think that's what people are used to getting. It may be that people like it, I don't know. People liked taking stuff away with them. One of the things that really came across strongly, that question about jargon, about the acronyms. Do we learn what an ICB is? Do we learn these things? And there was a really strong feeling, and it first came up in Opening Doors in Norfolk, but since it's come up a lot about, and there's this thing, well, people could just come along and talk to us. It's like, it's really simple. Just come along and tell us what it means. And that seemed to be really highly prized, about more than a glossy piece of Easy Read, was somebody actually turning up, sitting down and explaining things to people. And there was almost like this sort of sadness that people didn't do that. And this was another thing about the Newton meetings, was and is that I don't think I could do it over Zoom. So there are things I spot. So a group recently, everybody answered the same way as the first person to speak. So a woman with a strong opinion said something, and everyone goes, yeah, I wouldn't have picked that up over Zoom. I'm not saying that information is useless. I'm just saying you can see what's going on in the room and maybe adjust it, or in the next meeting, or just have an awareness of it. Whereas over Zoom, I wouldn't have picked up on that, I don't think. So yeah, long story short, paper at the moment, phone second. A lot of people listen to podcasts. YouTube videos are very popular as well. I think there was a thing about, I wish there was more Easy Read on YouTube. A couple of groups have said that. Okay.
Question from oh, sorry, go on.
So no, go
Go
ahead.
on.
No, go.
I was just going to say, question from Amelia. Whether, and this, I don't think this is something that you really covered in your sessions, but just an interesting point, really, whether you found that many groups of people that you spoke to also had other impairments, such as with their eyesight.
Yeah, and again, this is one of those ones where it depends on the group. You go there and a group's done a lot of work about other sensory impairments. And I'm just thinking about a group recently, I think it was North Somerset People First, where every answer was, well, what about people who can't hear? What about people who need help seeing or can't see? So it's one of those things that came up, and not just about sensory impairments, also mental health, and also friends and partners of people who might not consider themselves learning disabled, but like the group and the fellowship of it and supporting somebody into that group, and have sort of found their place in that. So I was seeing that quite a lot, about people that drove but were answering the same questions with enthusiasm and enjoyed being part of that self-advocacy group. So yeah, so there is this sort of crossover, really. Again, this is just my observations on a certain day, but it's interesting. I don't know if that answered it.
And just another one from the chat. This I don't think was covered, but just I thought it was probably an interesting thing to bear in mind as you go into the second set, is whether those preferences in terms of formats, whether they lay across any lines in terms of age or any other characteristic.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good one, because it is a cliche, but some groups, people are fact checking me when I'm talking on their phone, and I'll be saying about this, and people are sort of like looking it up and looking at the Photo Symbols website, and the people that doing that were younger, doing that, about going to the phone first rather than waiting and sort of processing it through sort of face to face. So that was interesting. I mean, I don't know how much time we've got left. We're coming close to the end.
10 minutes, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I just wanted to talk about the next stage, really. So I've said a bit about secondary meetings, going out and talking to people again. I've talked about the work that we're doing around voice and how this all kind of filled in as a touchstone to our training, EasyMaker, other parts of the Photo Symbols empire. But there's something else there about going back to that idea about quality checking. So what we're aiming to do pretty soon is we've spoken to 5 groups out of the 24, and we'd like to bring in, so there's people from some of them here today. We'd like to bring in something on EasyMaker where on the last page it says something like, this is used AI, and AI is great and all that, but you get a better, you might get better results from working with people with lived experience and asking people themselves. And then there'll be a space for a logo, and then there will be a list of groups that people can go directly to and pay. And it's nothing to do with us. That's a transaction between the person making the EasyMaker document and the group. and then it'll just provide a bit of, and people can ask the group to quality check their EasyMaker document, and it's about sort of being aware that as AI comes in, it's got potential for taking money away from self-advocacy groups. And if we make this fantastic tool and it takes income away from self-advocacy groups, and we're asking self-advocacy groups to tell us what they want, it's just this really nasty spiral. So we're trying to sort of think of ways where we can steer income via EasyMaker and other things that we're working on into groups, and those groups getting paid and getting status as experts, really. And so pretty much having the last word, that the document, I can't force people who use EasyMaker to get their work quality checked, but we can encourage heavily, I hope. So that's the plan. That should be happening in the next few months, and the first wave will come out, a couple of months, and there'll probably be another wave before the end of the year, sort of September, October. So there's lots of plans. This is what I'm saying, this idea about it's a starting point, the standard, and it's a point that we can build off. And so the groups would check it against the standard. And also that was that idea about, well, people have got their own personal stories, their own lived experience. I didn't know the information about what time the disco was at, so I missed it, or I didn't know that I should put 2 tablespoonfuls in instead of 2 teaspoonfuls. So it's people have got these experiences where information's failed them, and there'll be space in that quality checking experience for that lived experience perspective as well. So this is the kind of next phase as we see it. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. Unless there's any more questions, please feel free to reach out to me and get in touch. And if you've got a group that you think if you're part of a group or you know of a group that you think would like me to visit, do let me know. Yeah, just get in touch. My email is pete@photosymbols.com, and my number is on the website, but it's 07976 740 977. That's 07976 740 977.